Nandana Brajajana Ranjana Yamuna Tira Vanachari Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari Jaya Vishnupad Paramahamsa Vivedakacharya Astadvata Shishima Nitya Lila Bhuvistone His Divine Grace Labai Charan Arvinda Bhaktivedanta Swami Maharaj ISKCON Dvividi Founder Acharya Jagaguru Patita Pavana Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. A little bit come this way. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Vivedakacharya Astadvata Shishima Nitya Lila Bhuvistone His Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Goswami Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Antakuri Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Jai. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam Ki Jai. Yuga Dharma Shri Harinam Sankirtan Yagna Ki Jai. Shri Shri Radha Govinda Ki Jai. Shri Shri Radha Govinda Mandir Ki Jai. Nitai Gaur Premanandi Haribol. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to the assembled devotees. All glories to Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Hare Krishna. Reading from the Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 3, Chapter 8, titled Manifestation of Brahma from Vishnu. Reading today verse 8 and 9. 8 has no purport. I will simply say the Sanskrit and read the English, and then we will chant responsively the Sanskrit together for verse number 9. Sankhayana Paramahamsya Mukyo Vikam Samano Bhagavad Vibhuti Jagada So Smad Gurave Nivitaya Parasaras Yata Vihaspades Cha. The great sage Sankhayana was the chief amongst the transcendentalists. And when he was describing the glories of the Lord in terms of Srimad Bhagavatam, it so happened that my spiritual master, Parashar, and Brihaspati both heard him. So this is text 9. Provacha, verse 9, is it there? Okay, good. Mayam sa dayahur, dayalur, okay. Ukto muni kulastyena Puranam Adyam So Ham Tavaitat Katayami Vatsa Shradhalave Nityam Anuvrataya Provachamayam Sa Dayahor Ukto Muni Pulatyena Paranam Adyam Soham Daivatat Katayami Vatsa Shradhalave Nityam Anuvrataya Provachamayam Sa Dayahor Ukto Ipulatyena Paranam Adyam. Soham Daivatat Katayami Vatsa. Shradhalave Nityam Anuvrataya. Provachamayam Sa Dayalur Ukto. Ipulatyena Puranam Adyam. Soham Daivatat Katayami Vatsa. Shradhalave Nityam Anuvrataya. Vachamayam Sadayalu Ukto. Adyam. Soham Daivatat Katayami Vatsa. Shadalave Nityam Anuvrataya. Provacha said, Mayam unto me, Sa he, Dayalu, kind-hearted, Ukta, aforementioned, Muni, sage, Pulatsyena, by the sage Pulastya, Paranam Adyam, the foremost of all the Puranas, Sa'aham, that also I, Tava, unto you, Etat, this, Katayami, shall speak. Vatsa, my dear son, Shadhalave, unto one who is faithful. Nityam, always. Anuvrataya, unto one who is a follower. Translation. It's cookie time. That's not the translation. That's Gopal Champu, who's making my feet warm by not wearing socks. Hare Krishna. The great sage Parashar, as aforementioned, being so advised by the great sage Pulasya, spoke unto me, the foremost of the Puranas, Bhagavatam. I shall also describe this before you, my dear son, in terms of my hearing, because you are always my faithful follower. Let's repeat together. The great sage Parashar, as aforementioned, being so advised by the great sage Pulastya, spoke unto me, the foremost of all the Puranas, Bhagavatam. I shall also describe this before you, my dear son, in terms of my hearing, because you are always my faithful follower. Purport by His Divine Grace, ISKCON's founder, Acharya Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. The great sage of the name Pulastya is the father of all demoniac descendants. Once upon a time, Parashar began a sacrifice in which all the demons were to be burnt to death because his father had been killed and devoured by one of them. The great sage Vishishta Muni arrived at the sacrifice and requested Parashar to stop the deadly action. And because of Vishishta's position and respect in the community of sages, Parashar could not deny the request. Parashar having stopped the sacrifice, Pulatya, the father of the demons, appreciated his Brahminical temperament and gave the blessing that in the future he would be a great speaker on the Vedic literatures called the Puranas, the supplements of the Vedas. Parashar's action was appreciated by Pulatya because Parashar had forgiven the demons out of his Brahminical power of forgiveness. Parashar was able to demolish all the demons in the sacrifice, but he considered, quote, demons are so made that they devour living creatures, men and animals, but why on that account should I withdraw my Brahminical qualification of forgiveness, unquote. As the great speaker of the Puranas, Parashar first of all spoke on the Srimad Bhagavatam Purana, because it is the foremost of all the Puranas. Maitreya Muni desired to narrate the same Bhagavatam he had heard from Parashar, and Vidura was qualified to hear it because of his faithfulness and his following the instructions received from superiors. So Srimad Bhagavatam was being narrated from time immemorial by the disciplic succession even before the time of Vyasadeva. The so-called historians calculate the Puranas to be only a few hundred years old, but factually, the Puranas existed from time immemorial before all historical calculations by the mundaners and speculative philosophers. Om Jnana-timirandasya Jananjana Shalakaya Chakshurlanmitam Nena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapidam Nena Bhutale Svayam Rupakadamayam Dati Svapanantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Utabharakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagujatam Sahagana Raganatan Vidamdam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadudam Parijana Sahitam Shri Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sagana Lalita Shri Vishaka Vinamscha. Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabando Jagatpate Gopisha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Jayatam Surito Pangur Mama Manda Matergati Matsarvas Papadambojo Radha Madana Mohano Divyad Bindaranya Kalpajumada Srimad Ratnagara Singha Sanasto Srimad Radha Shula Govinda Devo Vistalabi Savyamano Smarami Srimad Rasa Risarambi Bamsi Bhatatastita Karshan Venus Vanar Gopir Gopinata Striye Stuna Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Vishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyevacha Patitanam Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Nama Om Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prasthaya Bhutale Srimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namane Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pacharane Nirvishesha Sunyavadi Paskita Deshatarine Pravachamayam Sadayala Ukto Munipalatyena Paranamadhyam Soham Taivatat Katayami Vasta Shadhalave Nityam Anuvritaya. The great sage Parashar, as aforementioned, being so advised by the great sage Pulasya, spoke unto me, the foremost of the Puranas, Bhagavatam. I shall also describe this before you, my dear son, in terms of my hearing, because you are always my faithful follower. So this is Maitreya Muni speaking to Vidura. This chapter, Manifestation of Brahma from Vishnu. So what is the first aphorism of Vedanta Sutra? Tato Brahma Jignasya. Now is the time to inquire. Inquire into what? Into the absolute truth. And absolute truth is ultimately to find what is yours and everyone's origin. One very simple, easy to understand for anyone and everyone proof that there must be God is ask everyone, do you have a father? And everyone will say, yes, I have, or I had a father, whether he was a good father or a bad father, responsible or irresponsible, that doesn't matter. But the biological function of obtaining the material body that you're in at the present time was performed by a father and, of course, a mother. But the father is the one who delivers the seed, and the mother, equally important in one sense, but is the receptacle or the receiver of the seed that allows the seed to fructify, grow, mature, and ultimately have the body and a designated species of life. So now, did your father have a father? Grandfather? Now, did your grandfather, did he have a father? Okay. Now we're getting to the place, especially in Kali Yuga, where people are lucky to live to be 50 or 60 years old. I don't know, 70. What is they say is the lifespan. You won't, who here remembers or had any association with their great-grandfather. I can't raise my hand. But by logic, we accept that your grandfather had a father, and your grandfather's father also had a father. So in numbers, they have billion, trillion, quadrillion, quintillion, sextillion, how many unlimited numbers. So when you say great, 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 how many times can you say great grandfather? But ultimately, who is the father of your great, 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 unlimited great grandfather? That is God. How can you deny? Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, I am the seed-giving father in all species of life. So this chapter is just warming up, which is going to begin soon, describing the Supreme Father in his manifestation of Garbhodakshay Vishnu. There's a wonderful painting on the back cover of the book. And the realization of the first living entity in this universe, Lord Brahma, who is the most qualified living entity, because he takes the post of the original progenitor on behalf of the seed-giving father. His job, Lord Brahma, is to create all the different species of life to fulfill the desires of the living entities in terms of their material enjoyment. There's a description of the Lord in the Sri Ishopanishad that Krishna is the independent, self-sufficient philosopher who's been fulfilling everyone's desire since time immemorial. Even there's the Christian saying, man proposes, but God disposes. And Prabhupada would point out to us that everything is based on desire. There's the beautiful presentation by the Lord himself in his chapter, Purushottam Yoga, the 15th chapter, the banyan tree, which is a perverted reflection of the spiritual world and the roots that keep us in the material world, which become like a banyan tree, just like so complicated, like a big tangled mess, is based on desire. What is that saying? By desire, we come into this material world. By desire, we stay in this material world. And by redirecting and or proper use of desire, we get out of this material world. This is the 14th day, Chaturdasi, Mag Shukla Chaturdasi. It's the second to last day of the month of Mag in the bright waxing period of the moon. We are one day after the appearance of Lord Nityananda, and tomorrow is Mag Purnima, which is the appearance day of Srila Narottam Das Thakur. And Srila Prabhupada, he has, in the very first song of Narottam Das Thakur, there is the Vaishnav Padyavali. There are many, many great Vaishnavas who have composed beautiful hymns and songs and prayers and poems. In fact, even one of Srila Rupa Goswami's books is called Padyavali, which is a collection of prayers of many different Vaishnavas. And if you look at that book, you'll see out of humility, Kavi Chandramash put in my hand a book of selected classes given by Tribhuvanath Prabhu, who joined the Krishna consciousness movement in 1969. He was one of the first crop of devotees made by the 6 London devotees, Yamuna and Guru Das, Mukunda and Janaki, Shamasundar and Malati. He was from Glasgow or Edinburgh, from Scotland. And just a little bit diversioning here in a transcendental way in honor of Sri Bhuvanath. He had arranged a program for Prabhupada in Glasgow, in one of those, Glasgow or Edinburgh, one of the main cities there, town hall. And it was a grand success. And Prabhupada, similar that he had done with Madhu Dwees Prabhu at the conclusion of the epic 1970 San Francisco Rath Yatra, just hugged him up and down and rubbed his back and said, "I'm very, very pleased with you. Go on preaching." And he himself was hardly or sparsely educated in terms of what, quote unquote, normal people think is the standard of education today. But because, as it's described here, you are always my faithful follower. He had such love and appreciation for Srila Prabhupada in his biographical sketch in that little book. It's described that Sri Bhuvanath Prabhu felt the just unbounded and unlimited, unreserved love of Srila Prabhupada, and just wanted to reciprocate by doing anything and everything he could, which in the mere 48 years that he was present in this world was simply astounding. And he opened up temples in so many places. He was one of the pioneers of Africa. And devotees still to this day consider him a very important and beloved Shiksha Guru in their lives. So anyway, it's simply said all success that he had in his life, he simply attributed it to his spiritual master, His Divine Grace, Srila Prabhupada. So in Rupa Goswami's Padyavali, you see many of the authors who wrote the extraordinary, heart-moving and seduntically absolute, just beautiful absolute truth. Their name are anonymous, at least 50% he collected. So Srila Narottam Das Thakur, it was hard for him to remain anonymous. He was the son of perhaps the wealthiest people of the day. He was the son of a king. And as the only son, he was the obviously expected heir apparent, but his mood of renunciation of materialistic life was just like Raghunath Das Goswami, just like trying to suppress a blazing fire, impossible. So the words and realizations of Narottam Das Thakur, Srila Prabhupada has simply stated, has written his songs, many songs are recognized as authoritative by all Vaishnavas. He has sung these songs in simple Bengali language. That's one excellence of Narottam Das Thakur, who was a genius who could defeat the caste Brahmins and all other types of Mayavad philosophy, no matter how complicated the so-called atheistic or materialistic philosophy in so many word jugglery ways. He was expert to defeat them, but still he was able to present the highest conclusions of Gaudiya Vaishnavism in a way that even the common person, and especially in those days, uneducated and even illiterate, could understand very, very nicely. So not that one is so-calledly educated and can't communicate anything of value, but if one has realized the absolute truth, then one can impress that upon all classes of personalities. There's the scholar and the boatman story, play. very highly educated. Of course, when the story originates during the British Raj period, so it's like the subjugated population. I'm sure they would love to find any type of way to make jokes or to ridicule their oppressors. So very intelligent scholar, and he's, taking a boat ride by a simple, uneducated village boatman across one of the many rivers in probably Bengal, which was like the main place the British put a lot of energy to, the crown of the British Empire, Calcutta. My dear scholar, do you know the science of, what's the science of birds, ornithology or something? Anyway, whatever. This bird, no, sir, I don't know. I'm just a villager. I just know how to row my boat, and I just chant Hare Krishna, which my spiritual master told me to do. That's all that I know. 25% of your life is wasted. And then whatever the next thing the scholar imagined was very important to know, very valuable, but in ultimate scheme of things, completely useless. And the boatman again said the same thing. No, 50% of your life is wasted. Third thing, 75% of your life is wasted. Then, as is common, especially during monsoon season, you see this huge, the sky became dark, and all of a sudden the strong gale wind came, and it was very clear to the boatman that a very terrible storm was going to come, and there would be no way that he would be able to guide the boat through such a, but he knew very well how to swim. And so the boatman said, "My dear sir, do you know how to swim?" It's not a joke. It's funny, but it's that, really, it's the big thing is going to happen. And the only way to survive is to abandon the boat and swim. "No, sir, I don't know how to swim." Well, 100% of your life is wasted. So that knowledge of how to swim means how to get out of the ocean of repeated birth and death. So the spiritual master, we have accepted you as captain of the ship just so that you can help us cross the dangerous ocean of Kali Yuga, which diminishes all the good qualities of the human being. Samsaradava nalalita loka chanaya karuna ganaganatvam. It's understood that Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, who has given us this Guru Astakam, he's listed in our parampara as the next disciplic heir of Narottam Das Thakur, but he actually appeared 4 disciplic generations afterwards. But in terms of the prominence and importance of Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur and Narottam Das Thakur, they're listed one after the other. So he's written these songs in simple Bengali language, but the purport, the deep meaning of his songs is very significant. So we're saying one of Narottam Das Thakur's songs every single day, Sri Guru Charana Padma, and he speaks of the importance of desire. Make the words of the spiritual master one with one's heart. Do not desire to have anything else remain within one's heart. Desire to please the spiritual master, Uttam Gati, raises one to the highest position. So this chapter is about the realization of the Supreme Personality of Godhead as one can realize and perceive as being a creature of this material world. How important it is. And we see how that first personality, Lord Brahma, when he was ultimately fully blessed and rewarded by the Supreme Lord for having followed his instructions in the matter of how to situate himself properly by tapasya, penance and austerity. Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, acts of penance and austerity should never be given up, not that because they purify even the great souls. And Srila Prabhupada would always caution us, do not think that you are now very advanced, you are a Paramahamsa, and you can give up the regulative principles and regulated life. You put yourself in a very dangerous position. So this is very interesting that how Maitreya is describing how he received the transcendental knowledge, which he is now giving and very happily imparting to Vidura because of his faithfulness. And there's some interesting details here that seem very surprising. The great sage of the name Pulastya is the father of all demoniac descendants. Just like Lord Shiva, he's glorified as the greatest of all Vaishnavas. Yes. But he has to take care. Basically, he's like the organizer and leader of very low in the mode of ignorance, demoniac creatures, personalities. And in the very beautiful chapter in the 4th canto, chanting the song sung by Lord Shiva, he reveals his heart and inner thinking to similarly, like Vidura, great devotees, the Prachetas, that one who is a devotee of Krishna is actually dear to me. And Prabhupada in the purport there says that devotees, direct devotees of Lord Shiva are not particularly dear to him. But those who are devotees of Vishnu, they're very dear to him. And many times these direct so-called devotees of Lord Shiva, and the story Deliverance of Lord Shiva is revealed to us. One of the lessons is there that the so-called devotee of Lord Shiva's, a lot of time it's exposed that they're really not very devoted. Yes, I cut my flesh to please Mahesh. Come quickly, O Lord, come soon, come now. We did a play in Boston some years ago, and that was one of the lines by Brikasura. I played Lord Shiva, so I was scared to death by when he later decided, well, Lord Shiva asked, he's Ashutosh, he's easily pleased. Said, yes, because you don't have to undergo this crazy austerity of cutting your flesh and offer it to me as an oblation. I become pleased with a simple offering, a handful of water and a leaf from a bale tree. But because you have pleased me, I'm prepared to reward you whatever you want. Anything? Yes, whatever you want. Well, let me see. I want the benediction that whosever head that I touch with my hand will immediately crack in a million pieces. Ha 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 ha. And the first person whose head I'm going to touch is you, Lord Shiva. Ha ha. So, what is that? A very nice disciple? Not very good. So that just shows the caliber in the extreme. So we don't want to be a disciple like that we take something from the spiritual master, like the Mayavadis probably give a drastic, that in Bengal, they say you take a guru and you kill him and push his dead body to the side, and then you climb on the seat and you become the guru. Not like that. So Prabhupada would say, do not think that you are more intelligent than your spiritual master. That is fall down. You gave me eyes to see, is my Lord, birth after birth. Chakudan Delo J, Janmi Janmi, Prabhu say, Dibya Gyan Ride Prokashito. So Parashar is doing that, and he had to be for the demons. a sacrifice in which all the demons were to be burnt to death. In a similar situation, who was the son of Maharaj Parikshit, Janmejai? He was very angry that the Takshar serpent had bitten Maharaj Parikshit. Of course, it was destined to happen. And he performed a sacrifice to kill every single snake in the world or the universe. And they're all falling into the fire. And he had to be dissuaded, stop this sacrifice. Because even envious and angry snakes, they have a purpose. As it's described here. What was his thinking? Yes. Demons are so made that they devour living creatures, men and animals. Now, the important thing that's described here is that he exercised his Brahminical power, his tejas of forgiveness. The great sage Vashishta Muni arrived at the sacrifice and requested Parashar to stop the deadly action. And because of Vashishta's position and respect in the community of sages, Parashar could not deny the request. That's also very important. When a very powerful personality is engaging in an action which there could be disagreement in that action or modus operandi, then someone to come forward who would discuss the nuances of this action. It should be someone, if not just equal, but superior in position. So this is an etiquette and a standard, and especially so in Vaishnav society, that if we see something that we have some question with someone who is senior to us, then so there's no danger of offense, and perhaps we might not really actually understand what it is, what's actually taking place. We approach someone who is superior, or at least contemporary and equal to that person, and then our responsibility and our involvement is properly. Just like there was Srila Prabhupada in Henry Street, there was a situation where the temple leader and his wife were engaging in forbidden activities. And many of the temple devotees were, they were upset or bewildered by this, but they maintained their respect, which is nice, but they allowed those activities to go on. Ultimately, it was pointed out, and it ultimately came to Srila Prabhupada, and things were corrected. But one thing Prabhupada pointed out, it's not that you just go along with things blindly. You have to, you see something that's clearly wrong, then you have to speak out against it, but through proper way. So Parashar could not deny the request. Parashar, having stopped the sacrifice, Palasya, the father of the demons, appreciated his Brahminical temperament and gave the blessing. So here he is. He's the leader, or the father of the demons, but he was stopped, and he's appreciating the Brahminical temperament, and he gave a blessing. He had the power to give the blessing that in the future he would be a great speaker on the Vedic literatures called the Puranas. Amazing how these things work. Parashar's action was appreciated by Pralasya because Parashar had forgiven the demons out of his Brahminical power of forgiveness. So Demons are meant to do these things, devour other living creatures. But why on that account should I withdraw my Brahminical qualification of forgiveness? It comes to mind most poignant and most well-known example, Jesus Christ being crucified, and what were his famous words? My dear Lord, forgive them, for they know not what they do. So that forgiveness in such an extreme position, it ultimately led in not too distant future, some few hundred years later, that the government that had did this to him, he's being persecuted as a heretic and it's crazy religion or whatever. His religion, the religion of Jesus, Christianity, became the mandated, not just accepted as another, but mandated religion for the whole Roman Empire, which was coming to an end anyway, and what to speak of for the whole Western world. And even to date, how powerful is most people in the human form of life, large majority of them, they accept how it's been diluted and interpreted and whatever. That's a different story. Their path to God through the teachings of Jesus Christ. So how powerful is this forgiveness? And it's described that the most powerful, how is it? The most powerful, important quality of a Brahmin is forgiveness. And this is based on very clearly seeing Krishna as the organizer, the permitter, and the controller, and the transformer of all things in time. A devotee has one of his abilities is he's Trikalagna. It's like Srila Prabhupada would astound the devotees. They would, in his knowledge of past, present, and especially what things would happen in the future. So by following, and the Lord himself, the super excellent, what is the chapter where Bhrigu Muni, and to test who is the most powerful, Lord Brahma, Lord Shiva, Lord Vishnu. What is that? The super excellent power of Lord Krishna? Is it the 90th chapter, the last chapter? Anyway, it's a detail. So what are the three incidents? Lord Brahma, Bhrigu Muni. Okay, so he's going to test. So there's three types of offenses, one worse than the other. So the first one, which is the least severe, is to disrespect someone in the mind. So Bhrigu Muni is the son of Lord Brahma, one of the direct sons, and he's supposed to bow down and offer obeisances. He didn't do that. And Lord Brahma became like irritated by that, visibly angry, disturbed. Then Lord Shiva, he's the brother of Bhrigu Muni. And what did Bhrigu Muni do? He insulted and spoke insulting words, verbal offense. It's like in Kali, you have the benediction. If you think a bad thing in your mind, it won't be held against you. But if you even think a good thing, like Krishna's Bhava Grahi Janardhan, who was in the Sringananda and the Chaitanya Charitamrita, he built a beautiful road of jewels and just for Lord Chaitanya to walk on. But it was amazing that at a certain point, he couldn't continue the road, even in his mind. And to that, it was very clear to him, this great devotee, that Lord Chaitanya was not gonna, I forget the exact details, go any further, but it's something to do with telling the devotees not to come to Jagannath Puri this year, that I will personally come and visit, and Advaitacharya, hearing this because he believed in the strength of Nishringananda's devotion and his realization. He believed it and kept the devotees back, something like that. So if you think something good, and Prabhupada in the purport there says, if you mentally, and of course in the nectar devotion, the poor Brahmin, he didn't have means, but he would like do all this in his mind, and then so I should make nice sweet rice, and then but if I should offer it and make sure it's not too hot, and in his mind he touches the pot, and his meditation breaks, and he actually had a burnt finger. And right at that moment, Lord Narayan in Vaikuntha is laughing, and Lakshmi Devi is asking, what are you laughing about? And brings the Brahmin back home, back to Godhead. So keep that Kali Yuga benediction in mind. Think good thoughts, And oops, it's late. Okay. Let's try to wrap it up in a moment or two here. So then the worst offense, corporal offense, he kicked. Did you ever do any direct seva to Radha Gopi Vallabha in Boston? He's got, Gopi Vallabha has the imprint of Bhrigu Muni's foot on his chest. My dear Brahmin, I'm so sorry that your very soft foot might have been harmed when you kicked my very hard chest. Please forgive me. But Lakshmi Devi, she was not very happy, and that's why it's described that Brahmins are always poor. Because, so it was clear to Bhrigu Muni, and he reported to all the sages that Lord Vishnu is supreme because he didn't get it all angry. So he considered rightly, why should I give up my Brahminical power of forgiveness? Demons, they're going to do what they're going to do. But maintain my Brahminical position, that is most powerful and most beneficial for everyone. So the final detail is how this is spoken before the Bhagavatam, compiled by Srimad Bhagavatam, so by Vyasadeva, so that Srimad Bhagavatam is equally or parallel eternal as is the Lord in the spiritual world and all of the devotees. And Prabhupada takes a nice jab at the mundaners and speculative philosophers who say that Puranas are a few hundred years old. There's the very amazing account of I believe it was the Bombay or Delhi Pandal. Giriraj Swami tells the story that, one like leather jacketed, kind of unbathed, kind of uncouth hippie biker. How did he get there? American Hell's Angel kind of guy. He wanted to like challenge Srila Prabhupada, and he's like in the back, and Prabhupada's disciples are keeping him back. But Prabhupada just stuns everybody. Bring him on stage, give him a seat, give him a microphone. Says, my authorities that I trust tell me that the Bhagavad Gita is only 2,000 years old. And Prabhupada said, that is nonsense, 5,000 years old. He said, well, I want to ask you, his first question, have you realized yourself in the very inner self of yourself? Some kind of question like that. Prabhupada said, yes. Anyway, it went on, and then it just, this kind of hippie fellow just started arguing and shouting, and then Prabhupada said, get him out of here, and it created a big commotion. Like many people were thinking, why did your guru should have answered his questions and this and that, and other people favored that Prabhupada dealt with him in that way. And it was to illustrate that one, to receive and understand the absolute truth, one must be submissive to superior personalities who are authorized and designated to present that truth. All right, so thank you very much. This is a nice verse. Provacha mayam sa dayola ukdo muni palatsiena paranam adyam soham taivatat katayami basta shadavale. Shadavale. So nice. Unto one who is a faithful, Nityam anuvrataya. The great sage Parashar, as aforementioned, being so advised by the great sage Pulasya, spoke unto me the foremost of the Puranas, Bhagavatam. I shall also describe this before you, my dear son, in terms of my hearing, because you are always my faithful follower. So as Gopi Vallabha and Radha Madhava, the original deity in Mayapur, and in Berkeley, Radha Gokulananda, they were all cast from the same. Maybe they have the mark of Brigu on them also. We have to ask someone who did deity worship for those deities. Maybe Mayapur Vasi could reveal that question. Hare Krishna Maharaj looks like he wants to ask a question, even though Rama Raya went over time.
Comment quick. The idea that in Kali Yuga, you don't get a sinful reaction, karmic reaction for thinking of doing sinful activities. But if you think about it all the time, you're going to do it.
Yes.
So it doesn't mean, okay, it's okay. I can just meditate all the time and all this nonsense. Because
That's a good point.
Whatever you think about, you think about good things, you get a karmic reaction, but then you'll do good things also. It's special mercy. That's why Kali Yuga is glorified. Otherwise, we would be finished. We couldn't last a few minutes. Everywhere you look, it's
but in advanced
bombarded.
in advanced devotional society, in an association of advanced devotees, their mind and senses are strictly under control, and they're not going to think bad thoughts. And because advanced devotees have very good mental telepathy, you know, you can read another person's. Like Srila Prabhupada was expert. He can understand what you were thinking. Prabhupada was you couldn't hide anything from Prabhupada. He would just, you know. So it's a concession, but not to be misused. Hare Krishna. Shri Shri Radha Govinda ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Nitai for Premanandi Hari Bol. Hare Krishna. Thank you very much. So Natha Bhargaranga went to the dentist to see if it would be authorized to get his procedure done. He told us yesterday, 95%. It's not going to happen today, but there's still a 5% chance, according to his prediction, it might happen. So everybody be ready for the fire alarm to go off, and to, even if it's at 1 o'clock in the morning, and throw your fireman uniform on and slide down the pole and get into the fire truck. But the fire will only be like a 5-minute walk away at the Atlantic Avenue. the fire of Sankirtan Yagna, you know, getting fired up.